As a compensation professional, you probably don't need me to tell you how crazy life could be this time of year. But today we've got some fun stories to share and some ideas of how to deal with all of the complaints that potentially come when you've completed that compensation cycle. And today we're talking with Laura Morgan, who is the founder and owner of Morgan HR. And she has some fantastic stories to tell us and some ideas of how we can get through this particular part of the year. Laura, thank you so much for talking with us
So it's an
today.
honor. Thanks so much for having me.
So, you and I have talked before, and you've told me about some of the crazy stuff that happens for compensation professionals in organizations. Once payroll has, or excuse me, once the compensation process has been finalized, and I guess people are seeing the outcome of those
Yeah.
decisions. Tell me a little bit about some of the crazier stories or interesting stories that you've heard of what compensation professionals deal with this
Well,
time of
it's
year.
comp professionals, HR professionals. Unfortunately, I bet you it doesn't matter. You could be an owner of a company as well. Um, the most common thing that happens after an employee sees their check is that day they're happy. That day they got money. They just have something. But the next day, I think it's because they might have gone home and their spouse might have said to them, well, how much is that really? And what did other people get? I think what happens at the dinner table or the car ride to and from something together, the question then starts to happen in the head. Well, wait a minute. How did that salary increase happen? And most of that is because the manager might not have been equipped well enough to answer the question, or they might have made up in their head what they thought was the right answer to the question. So an employee, it will start with the employee going maybe possibly to their manager or skirt around the manager to come to human resources and say, listen, I've been here for X number of years and I have gotten the same salary increase for so many years in a row. I don't understand how it's possible that I have friends or my wife or my husband, they got a bigger increase than I got. And I need to understand, why am I only getting this amount? Or the big one this year will be, inflation was so high. How is it possible that I'm getting just a couple percentage points? And it is very telling. And usually those are the vocal few that will have a colleague or a friend or a senior leader that they're going to end up going to. And then all of a sudden you have the senior leadership saying things, you should have equipped us better. Where'd you get your data? Oh my gosh, everybody's got the data, and they'll go ahead and even go down that path. You might have people, I call them the ones that are the armed. They come armed and ready and they got their data, and they're going to pull from everything north of their salary that they can find on the internet. And very rarely and expectedly, I guess, you wouldn't see anybody pulling anything south of their salary, and then they're going to believe their data is the right data versus how in the world can you, as how can, oh, been insulted, how can you be a good compensation consultant if you didn't have this information? Yeah, it gets to be
Wow.
the reveal, I guess, came out. So in January,
Okay.
because in December and early January, you're collecting the data from the manager's recommendations. And then unfortunately, the employees might get a post-it note. They might get uh, my manager didn't
I
tell
think
me.
you told me that once. You said that some people are informed of their pay raise just on a post-it
Oh,
note. Here you go.
yes. Managers have had this happen to themselves, and then therefore they feel that that's how they could get away with it, quote unquote, get away with it. And then they might not have had good HR partnerships to help them handle it in a different way, or and then they just think that that's normal. And I even have CEOs that just rely on the HR person to tell their direct reports what they got. And they might even say, if they complain about it, go to it, just you handle it. The CEO sometimes doesn't want to get involved with it. And you can only imagine that creates a culture cascading further down, unfortunately.
Hmm.
But
You had told me once, because as you know, I'm very new
I
to
know.
all of this, and I'm loving learning about all things HR compensation that you guys have been teaching me. You talked about the walking down the hall after these things have been shown, kind of trying not to make eye contact with people, hoping people don't just come up to you and start talking about why didn't I get
Oh,
better pay, or what happened this year. I mean, that I had no idea it's that difficult for these professionals, and it makes sense. I guess I just never thought about it
yeah.
before. So when you and you've experienced this because you were in this whole world before you started Morgan HR. Um, so what is it that you feel like? Um, what is something? Just give us one thing that can be done.
Uh,
Maybe let's say you didn't do it, you didn't solve the problem before everything rolled out, but now it's
right.
too late, right? We're starting to hear complaints. What's something that you would recommend that a professional does who's getting these fielding these complaints? How do you
Um,
how do you advise them?
it's actually just being genuine. I think what happens is managers or HR or even comp professionals that don't feel confident in just addressing an employee relations issue. It is an employee relationship issue. I find that I usually call it parent to child. So it's the I really aim for the conversation to be adult to adult. I've asked many employer manager training sessions, how many of you hired children? And nobody has, right? We all hire adults. So when we hire adults, we need to remember that that's a level set conversation. And so, and think about my world. I hire comp experts. They have all the data. So they need to hear my decision. They need to hear how I evaluated where they are on the performance spectrum, where they are on the contribution spectrum. um, I actually ask them to make me an offer and I'll see if I'll buy it. So it's just one of those very
Oh,
practical. I mean, every day you've heard this too. Every day we're interviewing for keeping our job and having a job. I feel it's making sure that people know that, um, hey, these are the cards that we have here at this company. And the cards that we have may not be the cards that somebody else has in another company, because they might not have the same EBITDA, or they might not have they might have a richer benefit plan, or they might have. So it's really just reminding people. And then I laugh about this. I just did this last night or 2 nights ago at a board meeting with a large school district. I actually pharmaceutical industries, yes, they pay 115% average beyond an education industry. Just but everybody says, well, why do they get so much more? I said to the board, and I said, why do they have to pay so much more? It's not necessarily that they're getting more. We have to understand that the pharma industry has to pay that. And I worked pharma my career, in my corporate career. And at the time, yeah, it was good, sexy dollars. And I appreciated that. But then came the reality of what my opportunities were for my own growth. It was pretty prescriptive. There were certain things that I had to experience before somebody was going to consider me for the next gig or the next job. And I'd have to do the same thing over and over and over. And I realized for my own sake, and if my manager, and I've talked to my managers about my career aspirations pretty frequently, and my comp aspirations. I remember telling them very honestly, by the time I'm 35, I'm going to make 3 times my salary. And they were,
okay.
oh, okay, that's a good dream, and I made sure. So my goal was hopscotch as much as I can to get to that number. People may or may not have that number. So going back to your question, it's really knowing where the employee is. And if you're a good leader, a good partner, you don't even have to be their manager. You could just be someone that's going to level set with somebody. Like, was that really a surprise? Did you really think that that salary increase was going to be much different than what you received? Now let's talk about why you felt that way. And then, well, I've gotten it a few years in a row, and I know when we had inflation in the past. Okay, so you're aware of what my decision was, and I didn't have much room. But at the same time, we're going to work with you and figure out where you want to go. Because in my company, I don't have that much growth. I'm a small business, right? So I don't get to have
Right.
the 28 layers of leadership that people have in large corporate environments. But I still have people that work for me, and I'm grateful. And I think they know that I have a different set of opportunities for them in my environment than what you might get in others. So, and people are, if they're truly hiring good adults, you can figure that out. So,
So yeah, so this is interesting. This opens up an entire conversation, maybe around psychology or even the concept of owning a process or um, being stuck in the middle of a process you don't personally believe in. Because I'm thinking, okay, what if these professionals, um, their company perhaps doesn't have the compensation strategy laid out
Mhm.
well, right? Which means every time they go through a merit cycle, there's this thing that blows up every time, and now they're basically in the crossfire. They're in the middle of it, and basically what I just heard you say is you basically own it and say, well, let's look
Mhm.
at why we had to make that decision, and not, I don't know, that was somebody
Well,
else's decision, and I just am doing my job, which is the worst thing you could do in that situation. Am I
oh,
right?
that's passing the buck, right? But then it's kind of funny. As soon as a manager does do that, the employee's not that foolish to say that you're still working here. So it's really getting down into the reality of that experience and level set. Like, don't abdicate. It's saying that we made a choice to be here, and then what we're going to get here is we're going to collect some wow while we're here working at this company, and we're going to give the company some wow while we're here. I used to call it a wow bag. So I'm going to collect the wow, and then I'm going to give you my wow as I work with you. And once I'm seeing my bag's getting pretty empty and I don't have much more to give to you, I have to go collect wow from somebody else. Or you're going to ask me to go collect wow from somebody else because maybe I've exhausted my contribution. And I don't feel in this day and age we have that longevity focus, nor should we. It should be longevity to your own personal career, and then make
Mhm.
it, where does this company help me, and and most importantly, it's a dual adult to adult. I will give to you, you will give to me, and we have a deal. And that deal, you got to look at it when your family needs it. Every time a company changes, they look at all the employees and the jobs. Well, what happens in your family dynamic changes? All of a sudden, you have a child, or you have a child that grew up and left the home, or you have a family new situation. Grandma's now moving in. Every time you have a life event in your family, it's the same time as a life event with a company. You should always look at, where are you with your compensation, and is this going to fulfill what you need? Um,
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's good. It's good insight. So, for those who are potentially watching this, who are in positions of, uh, they're able to, let's say, structure or fix some of the problems. So, let's say they just went through a merit cycle, things have not gone well.
yeah.
They're hearing feedback like this didn't go well. Just break it down for us really simply. Like, what's a couple of things that person, I'm assuming that's a person in
Mhm.
HR, well, I don't even know what the title would be, so you can inform me on that. And then a couple of things that they can
Okay,
do.
well, an HR leader that doesn't have a compensation department or a team that might work with a
Okay.
consultant periodically, they all have the same issue. So the biggest way to handle that is, one, just you have to invest the time to talk to your people. So you need to understand the manager's perspective, and I recommend that you don't go in there, was this good or bad? Ask, what were the benefits or drawbacks of that experience. And then I usually
Okay.
offer, if you had your druthers and it's the end of next year, what three things, no more, no less, would you expect me to fix if I wanted to get a good score with you as a good HR partner next year? Listen to your managers,
Okay.
and then tally that up and find a common theme. What And then you have an action, and you can see it because you got the feedback, and then you could actually act on it much more deliberately. And but don't think you could just change. Make sure you always do. Somebody just told me this is a religious thing, but it's also a continuum. Tell people what you're going to change, tell them what you are changing, and then tell them what you changed after you did. So it's really that three-step communication strategy that you really need to focus and do it right, do it with some help. And oh, and I say this often, asking for help is sexy. So if you feel that you can do it all by yourself, um, how honoring it is for you to go to a HR business partner that might be very good at communications and you might not be very effective. Ask your
Hmm.
partner in your business to, hey, I'm not talented in this space. That self-awareness is key. And then know your voids, and then seek to understand those as well, because others know what they are, so you might as well find out what they are, to make it work.
that is funny. A lot of times we're afraid to actually ask what people
Mm.
think because we're afraid it will suddenly occur to them the flaws that we
Yeah.
have, but they've
Oh,
known
yeah.
all along.
No, that's very, very true, and I love that because it actually, when you get a coach, the first thing that they have you do is ask your family about what they see in you, because your family can see what your strengths and weaknesses are, etc. So, I think that's the same thing. It's because everything we do, I told this board, like I said 2 nights ago, I said everything we're going to do with comp and that chaos that happens, because I said we are launching for the first time a new structure and a new way to pay people, and nobody has ever heard of this before in your respective world. But what we're going to have are what they came from another world. That's their touch point. And they had in another, so you have 80 people that are going to say that half of them will say, I've never heard of this before. Another half are going to say, well, that's not how my company did it when I was in corporate. That's not what I would have done over here. How in the world did you come up with that? And what does this mean? And um, you have to be ready for that kind of issue every January, because it's a new budget, it's a new process. There, you might have been adding, oh, we're now scheduling promotions twice a year. I thought I could do them whenever I want, or anything you try to do to improve a process, even though you know long term this is going to be a good deal and a good opportunity for the managers to streamline and also to improve our pay equity. um, we're in the day that we got to make sure that you, yes, as a manager, absolutely want to give that employee something. And I can almost mathematically support it. But guess what? That budget needs to address larger issues that I have in other areas. And so when managers say, well, I love this one. I thought I mean, I put you in for 12%. I only got that. Oh, that's lovely. So what did that do to the manager? Then get out of my way. You're not the decision maker. I want to now go to your boss. So when
Right. I thought you were my boss. Apparently,
right.
you're not.
So but there's that's the genuine innocence of a early career manager, maybe, that they just thought that that was the best way to handle it, deflect or say, hey, I'm in the same boat with you, so let's be best friends. So that's getting back to the parent to child. You've now abdicated to the next parent. If you were saying, I did look at this, I do feel there's an opportunity to move you over time, and we're going to need to realize that it's going to take time here. It's not going to be an immediate fix to address. And I agree, or I don't agree that, or by the way, you think that you know all these things. You think so. Um, you have a journey to learn. I think you need a level set with your own family that you're thinking you'll be promoted in 2 years. I think it's going to take you a good 4 to 5 to master this job, and that may
Wow.
not be the
Wow.
timeline you're looking for. But I'm kind of, as me, as how I see it, we could collect feedback from others to see, maybe I'm missing something, but there's some basics that you haven't been able to unpack yet and figure out. So
So, so that level of conversation, so that role playing, you're the manager talking to an employee on their team. Those conversations are probably not very common.
you're right.
And I think this is part of why you started Comp Aware,
Yes.
right? Which was to say, we've got to teach people within an organization how this
It,
works.
yes. Land.
Like why you get paid, how do you get to the next level? How do we all work together to make this happen? Tell me a little bit about that and like how that
Well,
aspect works.
it's one of those where you build something as a comp consultant into a company, and then you trust that their internal team will be able to deploy it and get everybody to see the bows and the beauty of what you put together. And then you realize it's when you call to do the 6 month follow up that, oh, it was really difficult. We had a lot of challenge. And then I said, so that was maybe 15 years ago. I'm like, okay, learning, Laura, you're going to add some communications. So then, but I was doing it. And so I was adding the build of the structure, the process, the admin, and then I would end up doing the comp aware, partnering with the HR leaders, saying, this is how we can make I work with LMS, learning and management system leaders, L&D departments. And then I say, realizing that not many other comp consultants focus on that. And by the way, when I was in corporate, the first person I hired, and Takeda, if you're listening, was a woman that was a communications expert. So I knew Takeda was brand new, and I was hired, and I was like, I could get an analyst, I could get anybody to evaluate a job. I just need someone that's going to interpret what I know is in this head 6 inches further down out my mouth, and it can be understood by every manager out there. And that was what
Yeah.
was so pivotal when I did that, and I saw that the impact was, in my mind, I felt that the managers appreciated later, maybe not immediately, but the good communication strategy doesn't expect immediate gratification, because what happens if it's quiet, you did all right. So, but you don't get the attaboys or attagirl. That's the way to go. You hope after everything's been deployed that you can walk and feel a calm and exhale. That you walked to the cafeteria, you went down the elevator, you got to the cafeteria, and nobody pulled you aside. So that's a good day. So
It's
yeah,
a win.
that's a win. So, but it didn't happen right away. But it meant when I learned that and bringing it into consulting, and then even with Comp Aware, I need to dedicate resources to make that available, because not every comp consultant out there does it. Not every comp consultant internally and externally. So we made it where it's available for manager training, even employee training. Uh, I test it. I go to different stores and restaurants, and I ask every employee that I meet, like, there's one grocery store in particular that says on their shirt employee owned, and I ask every time I go on a Sunday morning, do you know what that means? And I could tell their comp person's not getting to that person, because 9 times out of 10, the last 10 visits, they had no idea. And then my next question is, do you know there are people like me that, by the way, your company didn't hire me, but do you know there are people like me that study salaries? And when the employee said that they have no idea, that right there is an issue. Because that's, so the
Hmm.
employees feeling like, one, the managers and the companies are throwing darts on a wall. There's no rhyme or reason to that pay. And so an employee is making up in their head that they're just, grateful. I mean, hopefully grateful, but they're just getting paid. And then they see all this pay transparency and the signs out there, and they're thinking, why am I not getting those numbers? And they're not being taught that that's a whole different set of reasons why those numbers are what they are versus what you have here. When you have an employee owned on your shirt, sounds like that's a good thing versus what you're seeing is another 25 cents down the street. So maybe you want to unpack that a bit.
So it's interesting. It's interesting because uh, it's almost like this need that companies, it doesn't even feel like they're aware that they necessarily need. But if they really understood, like if you could get your entire company to understand why I get paid what I get paid, how do I get paid more? In other words, how do I create more value for this company that's hiring me? Essentially, you could change the entire dynamic of an organization if everybody were clear, this is how this works, rather than everything being this black
Mhm.
box that we're not exactly sure. And we just hope that something magical happens in January for us. And we're upset when it
Oh,
doesn't.
Lance, I know that we people could really because we all get paid. So we've been paid at least for those 2,000 millennia, right? So, but at that time, by the way, I actually researched further 300 years later. Long story, I like to learn, but people have been and they knew how to get paid. You used to barter, you used to, and then in the year, I think they said in 300, we got coins. So all of a sudden we had coins, and that kind of started the challenge of, well, how did you earn that coin, and how did you earn that coin? And I think from that moment forward, that coin, our common currency, really started creating this. We assume if you have it, that there's an equal, but unfortunately, you have maybe more thing. Yes, if you can get your structures communicated, you could do your salary ranges communicated. You explain the process to get promoted. You could say the competencies to illustrate so that people can see how you behave when you're evolving and growing your career. And then those are all consistent. And then you know what path you may not want to be like me. I didn't want to continue down the generalist area and an HR leader. I knew there were more opportunities, but I liked the challenge of the few spots for comp. So but
Mm-hmm.
it was a decision, right? But I knew I had to find all that data out, and I have to say I didn't have Google, I didn't have email inside. We only had it inside back in the day. Um, so it's more of now that all this is around, even though there's data around you, the challenge I have is that there's now so much data now you have to bring it into your business and say, how is this going to be communicated and sifted through? So that even though I didn't have data early in my career, now I have an abundance, and the pendulum has gone from one side to the other. But getting an employee in that mid range to just feel comfortable to stay in this little pendulum right here, that's what the goal is, and help them not think they need to swing out and go to another business. Or turnover's tamping down a bit. I think a couple of years ago, I think the breakout of COVID, everybody was like, all right, now what am I going to do? But I think you'll see things slowing down, being more thoughtful if they do it right. If managers and well, businesses in general, the day that the businesses really focus on talking to their employees and equipping them with the data that makes sense for that business. I have clients that don't even say what EBITDA is, and so you don't have to say that the number, but you could say how you're doing. So you don't have to say, and actually, if you're not doing well, why would you not share that with your employees? The chaos that you could avoid, I think you still have time to make sure you have letters, make sure you have a plan, even your incentive plan documents. It's not hard. Get your lawyer to partner with you, get those into the employees' hands. Um, Tell them, otherwise, it's a bonus. If you want a true incentive, it would tell the people how they're going to be paid.
Ah, that's really good. We talk about incentivizing people with these pays. I mean, the pay
Yeah.
increases, but if they don't know what drives it, you're right. It's not an incentive. It's just extra
Yeah.
money.
So, and then they don't even appreciate what you just gave them at next year. So, if you want to help them appreciate next year's bonus, let them know how it's being calculated, or even, hey, we're going with a calculation in this way, but maybe you're in a very volatile environment. Explain to people, we're going to do a check in 6 months. We will come back and let you know how we're doing. If we have to pivot, I want to let you know we might need a pivot. That's okay. Don't do it too frequently. Don't do it without good reason. But you can change the plan before you hit the wall. So sometimes
Okay.
people, and I know that's a debate people can say, but if you know the plan is not effective, do you change before you hit the wall, the time you hit the wall, or after you hit the wall? And so sometimes you have to be that leader and really help that CEO feel it's okay to change the plan if you know we need to change the plan.
When you see the wall
Yeah.
coming.
So, and that's in the negative, but on the positive, you might do the same. Say that you just acquired an amazing kick-ass product. Okay, well, okay, people, I know you're excited about the revenue number, but we're also going to fix that because that was a purchase with the lawyer and the CEO and the business development leader. So we're not. We need to right size some things midway. So that happens too. So that chaos. So you.
So, so this chaos and the complaining and all this stuff that, let's say,
Mm,
whoever's, if somebody's watching this and they're like, oh, this sounds very familiar, these conversations and all of that. You've got what? How many months do they
mm,
have to try to get this thing sort of wrestled down so maybe they don't experience the exact same
yeah.
things next January that they're experiencing
Okay,
right
in
now?
January, if you did what you know you should do, you got the letters out, you talked to all the managers, you explained the process, everybody's now in that settled down breathing. Unfortunately, in February, you might get one more kick up because you got the bonus checks. So you might have that come back for the select few. The proxy statements, if you're public, hopefully you'll be okay. Um, then I'd say reason why most of comp friends that I had, it was funny in April in the Chicagoland area, the boat season starts. And you might see on my one dock, the years I was in comp, we actually had three compensation professionals on the same dock. And it's because we were able to know that we were enjoying our summer. So we count on the chaos in the seasons from October through April. I feel badly. A lot of people that, oh, the spreadsheets. You probably are still in spreadsheets in the early part of January, and boy, are you drinking through a fire hose because I didn't even get there, Lance. Those are the day that you get the spreadsheet out, you might have 60 of them going to 60 managers because you're a super power horse and you're going to get every manager's opinion. And so you're going to make sure that that manager gets to make the recommendations. And you might have had it where that data was organized and you had a beautiful spreadsheet going out, but those managers are kind of sneaky devils. And all of a sudden they'll be like, I don't like that column. I'm going to go ahead and insert another column, or uh, I'm going to highlight everything in red in conditional formatting when you wanted it all to be toggled on the side, or you had very well written instructions and you said call me if you feel you're going to touch it. You might have even locked the cell and that crazy manager found out how to unlock it because somehow they are Excel breakaholics or I don't know, but it comes back to you and you're blown because it was supposed to be a very quick compile all the spreadsheets together and ta-da, there's my number. And then you have the ones that didn't follow the rules in the first place and they found out that they could override your cell control. And then all of a sudden you're getting an 8% to somebody that was really supposed to be a max at 4 based off that performance rating. And so no matter how much you program into that Excel document, even in today's beautiful way that Excel is, I feel that I most managers are pretty creative, at least that one, that all of a sudden you expect that 1 week or 2 weeks to get all this compiled for the board or for your leadership community, that it's going to be easy. And then you'll be up until 2 in the morning, very late. And then you'll get up in 6 and you'll wake up like at 4. You're like, oh, I know what it was. It had to be that guy. So then you end up losing your sleep. And so then, yes, by May, we're really excited to sit with a little margarita sitting on the back of the boat. We've evolved now that we're older. We're now in an RV stage, but it's those I'm sure are on the,
A boat with
yeah,
wheels.
that's pretty much it. So, but it's I feel because of Simply Merit, I now tell clients we won't do their spreadsheet merit process. So because I did do that for years for clients, and
Oh, let me clarify what you're saying there. So you used to help companies because you'd come in and say, "Let me help you with all of your
yeah,
spreadsheets," and try to collect all that chaos. And that's why you started
oh
Simply
yeah,
Merit, which is for those who haven't figured this out from the website. Simply Merit is a compensation management tool that you guys created so that people don't spend time in
okay.
spreadsheets and managers can't fool around with unlocking cells and doing crazy things that are hard to track.
That's
Is that
exactly
right?
what we did and why. Because Neil, when we sold one of our businesses, we were too young to retire, and I was in the throes of merit hell, and he was joking and it was flippant, but I said, okay, go make an investment. I said, if you're looking for something to do, get me out of this. And I put my screen in front of him and like showing him all the Excel mess. And then he went like this. Hmm. So then it was one of those where he took that initiative to, I think, save my marriage because um, see that you kind of proxy is what it's called, or emulate your leader. So as an HR person, you know that your business partner may or may not have all the time and the capacity to go through all the nuances. So having that from an internal person versus an external comp consultant sitting in my den doing spreadsheets, it was not effective. So I had to create something and make it more internal in that business. So yeah, no, it's beautiful and
That's
it's
cool.
slick. I That's Neil's power. He's got a good eye. Me, I do the functionality. He
Yeah.
makes it look pretty. So
So we're gonna bring this in for a landing, but I think we're one of the things I want to just get clarity on. So we said people are, let's say it just didn't go well this year. They're gonna take their little break. They're gonna celebrate their summer, and then they need to probably
oh,
dig in and figure out how do we fix this for next
don't
year. So what would be that
the
step?
step is don't wait until the August panic when people come back in August. I swear, if I could get this message out to every friend of mine that's a HR leader or anybody that doesn't know me now, because when you come back and the kids are back at school, all of a sudden you'll be like, oh, son of a bucket, I have all that comp stuff to do. Okay, we got to get a consultant. Sure, you'll get consultants and you'll have that chaos build because you'll be panicked. I got so much to do before, and then you'll realize you have to get your budgets approved before Jan 1. You have to get to the board or your CEO and then the board. So you're condensing your timeline very, and then you should also be planning the communications because if you're going to do what you did last year and wait until December to put these things together, you're going to be in the same situation. It's really important that you start like in July. Go ahead and enjoy a nice summer vacation. I think that's why high schools let you go on vacation in June. But when the kids are back in sports instead of back in school, that's your trigger to get your cycles going. Uh,
So, July, while you're celebrating the Independence Day, think about some freedom you could get in January if you just started right now.
Dance if they could do that and even just get us on the docket, because then the work starts.
Okay.
It's okay. Are you changing your structure? Did you get all your new market data? Do you have a budget forecast that you might need to start gathering? What did you do last year? Did you think you're going to change the bonus? Don't change it in November. You got to get it changed earlier. Um, all of that needs to take place much earlier is my one guide. Secondly is pick your poison. What are we changing? It's not if you're new and you never had any of these changes before, any of the structure, maybe give yourself a permission slip that you're just going to put in a grade structure, or maybe you're going to say, I'm going to organize my merit process because that was so chaotic. You don't have to do everything all at once, but if you do, it might be a great message. Also, if you didn't do your performance management, don't don't think that that's going to be the right way to start with comp and then do performance. I usually say start with performance and let comp support it, because we from a structure design when you're talking merit.
Tell me more about that.
So sometimes you know that you're going to do good performance management and then you're relying on the compensation team to put together an infrastructure. Well, tell us what your performance management process and your goals are on that first, because that would be your culture. That would be okay. Are you in a growth mode? Are you going to be evaluating people on their growth goals, or are you going to be evaluating them on what they did last year? So that's all dependent on your performance plan. If so, when you have merit or something reflected on your performance rating, let's know what that's reflecting first. So to help you with your structural and your philosophy statement from comp. When it comes to merit, you should just know that you want to get out of spreadsheets. And anybody, I love my high tech companies that still use spreadsheets. I actually converted what I said. Are you kidding me? You have a business intelligence, amazing business, and you're thinking you're going to give your managers across the global experience a spreadsheet. Yeah, that doesn't sound smart, does it, Laura? I'm like, no, I don't think so. So I think align even with your business model, especially if you're high tech. High tech should not be using spreadsheets. And
I think that's actually a really good point because we didn't get too much into spreadsheets, and we'll probably just set up another talk to talk about
mm,
spreadsheets in particular. But yeah, so what I'm hearing you say is some of the frustrations you're feeling in this month, some of the things that have happened may have just been due to that actual process of how you got the
yeah,
information, how you had to go about. I mean, even though it was stressful for you personally, it also does have an impact on everybody's experience if something goes wrong
for
with with these archaic
yeah, the
spreadsheets.
spreadsheet, your managers are expecting better. We're in the day of AI,
Yeah.
right? So we're
Yeah.
your managers want to have the data in front of them, have it be accurate, have it be where it's guiding in their decision making, give them the equipped training to help them have an effective decision and guide them against what you feel is appropriate. If you're doing all that on a spreadsheet and not on a system that you're focusing on the wrong thing. You're focusing on getting the tactical execution of a spreadsheet done instead of the thoughtful. Let me look at my entire organization and the thoughtful direction, and let me be able to cascade to see how they made their decisions, and you can zero in and be more strategic and thoughtful about your recommendations if you have more support from a good tool. I think
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. I saw that Simply Merit has this input where you basically your managers essentially go through step by step and
yeah,
fill out whatever you're asking them to do, and you're giving them guidance about what that
yeah,
is and what they need to be thinking about. It's almost impossible to give guidance in a
you
spreadsheet
think you did, but
because you can't funnel someone to the next thing, to the next
right.
thing, to the next thing. I mean, there are some hacks for that, but like you already said, it's pretty easy for somebody who knows what they're doing just to go undo. I'm going to unlock this. I'm going to go over here and do
It's
this.
so true, Lance.
So that's
So
fantastic.
it's ultimately why you need to have tools for most things, and organize them and make sure that they're simple. And that's why we didn't do so crazy heavy lift software because we wanted to go with those individual people. Like even me, I was employee 323 at Takeda or something like that, and when I built that tool or even have it for companies that are you have a lot of people. You just got to get the math, but it's more than the math. You want to see the message that's happening. You want to address the pay equity issues before you are done with the cycle. Wouldn't you like to see the data to
Hmm.
say, did you fix anything that you intended to fix? Or did you create more compression? Or did you have remaining inversion issues where all those new hires are still higher than the current employees? So if you don't have a tool that can help you get ahead of the numbers, then you're going to be chasing them with that Excel spreadsheet because all you're going to be doing is going back to the manager and say, explain to me why this changed here. So I used to say our job as comp is always to stay ahead of it. And if we're chasing the content, we're not effective. We are literally just a data.
I like that. Yeah. When you were talking about the spreadsheets, managers changing the spreadsheets or kind of doing whatever they want, essentially it's almost like you postpone the conflict
Yeah,
until everything sorts out and then there's confusion. Whereas, like with Simply Merit, you essentially get to say, here's our process. And if somebody has a question about it, they talk to you about it
yeah,
then before everybody's upset and things have already rolled out everywhere. So, I mean, it's really cool that what you guys created is like it fixes several problems in the process at once because it's not just, oh, this is easier than me doing a spreadsheet. It's this is a method to communicate,
yeah,
to get that information
yeah.
that I need, that we're all on the same page. I mean, it's really, it's smart how you guys have that set
Well,
up.
we're trying to make sure it's with Excel, you won't even be able to be an analyst except for the short window that you get the data back. You can be an analyst during the time, but you can almost become a predictive or prescriptive remedy once you see the data coming in. When as the data is coming in, we do have some opportunities for consulting team to partner with people during the cycle, and that's
Oh,
more what our role should be. It shouldn't be collecting data. Our role should be, let's go ahead and give you what we see are the challenges that you might want to fix now, or hey, we offer the time to talk to you because we might want you to see something that might be helpful for your comp strategy for either the latter half of this year or into next year. So it's important
hmm.
that the HR, and I love the way that everybody wants to have market data and they see that the market data, I get more calls saying the market data is not working. We still have issues. Well, it's because you're using market data, but you're just pulling data. You're not using it in a helpful way. And so when you're putting that market data into Simply Merit or any tool and you haven't looked at how it impacts your overall structure of a business, yeah, you might have data up here. I mentioned, okay, the job I mentioned with Neil, 28,000, 13,000 at the time, right? So people would see that we graduated 0 years of experience, same time. You have to understand and appreciate, do you want to pay 28,000? Hewlett Packard did. They hired Neil. But that's where for me, I went to a real small manufacturing company. So it wasn't just a 13. I had to understand that. So imagine my manager getting a spreadsheet and seeing 28, 13 and no no grade, no structure, no information to describe why that's so. They'll shrug their shoulder, fill out, all right, 4%, 3%, whatever. Well, back in those days, it was like 7 or 8. But anyway, it was, yeah.
Really
Well, they just got out
nice.
of a major recession, if you remember. So, but I mean,
Okay.
significant recession. Those days, we won't have that. So just know that. So if we have those days, then
I
we're
shouldn't
all
get
in
too
trouble.
excited.
So,
Okay, got it.
but
That's too fun. All right. Well, thanks for taking time to share some of this stuff with me today.
it was fun.
I'm learning a lot. I I think we've been working together now for about a month and a
Mhm.
half, and yeah, you've taught me a lot. There's a bunch of stuff that I had no idea even existed, and it's fascinating to see that what you guys are doing at Morgan HR impacts so much of an organization.
It's
Because if somebody actually takes advantage of what you guys can do and how you bring thoughtfulness to the process, this is way more than HR. This is way more than comp. It's basically business health, it's employee engagement. I mean, it's just a lot of things. So I think it's
Uh,
fantastic. I love what you're doing.
you're definitely getting the gist of it because that's our hope. We love it. It's exciting. I feel like we really do help companies. I am honored when they thank me. So it's a good feeling. And I've had clients that I even talked one today. I've had them for years. So that it's the nice thing to have an intermittent comp consultant. You don't need the full time gig on payroll unless you're really growing and going really fast. So that's sometimes the benefit of having a fractional comp team
Mhm.
that's on the ready to help you with whatever you need. So.
Yeah, that's good. And for those who are ready to get somebody in there,
Oh
that's
yeah, that's
where
true.
higher
Well,
comp
we do
comes in,
both.
of
We'll help you
course,
with the
right?
fractional piece, but we also, of course, if you those are in true growth, if you know that you have a significant growth pattern, you have to monitor your pay line. So because your managers are going to be very eager, and your talent acquisition team is going to bring in those people above, and what are you going to do with these people? And then you're going to be changing, and then so you have to have someone that's going to be strategizing, partnering on a day-to-day level with the business leaders if you're in tremendous growth. Or if you're becoming global all of a sudden, or you have an acquisition, you if you know that you're going to acquire frequently, you need someone on your team that's going to do this. But that's where it's always interesting. You can always get hundreds and hundreds of HR leaders. I worked at Abbott, so think about it. There were 300 plus HR leaders, but there was a small little slice of comp, one per division, and then the executive and corporate comp folks. So getting those spots, that's where it's such a small specialty, but we were the hub of many activities because you always have to be thoughtful as to the most important thing, your pay line, those people. And that pay line, a little shift like a heartbeat. You don't want to have it be too rocky, and you want to have it where it's not too dead. So you got to make sure you have good health
Right.
with your comp all the way through any change that you're doing. So
Cool.